What happens when a self-made CEO, dressed in grease-stained khakis and a fake beard, gets told to clock out early by a manager who doesn't know he signs the paychecks? Zayden Pierce built his fast food chain from a single trailer on the edge of town to 19 bustling locations across 3 states. He used to know every employee by name. But lately, he didn't even recognize the faces on the monthly staff reports. The business was growing fast, but something wasn't sitting right. Customer satisfaction had dropped. Complaints about long lines, cold food, and slow service were trickling in from one particular store, Store 9, just outside of Columbus. Zayden didn't want another filtered update from a district manager. He wanted the truth. So he grew out his beard, slapped on a pair of thick-rimmed glasses, and put on a name tag that read Danny. He was posing as a new trainee sent from corporate, part of a new pilot program to observe operations anonymously. It was just believable enough to pass. Store 9 had gone through 2 managers in 6 months. Now it was run by assistant manager Clay, who'd stepped up after the last manager quit unexpectedly. Zayden had never met Clay. Most of the hires at that level came through the district manager now. He stepped into the store at 7:00 a.m. Sharp, the smell of fryer oil clung to the air. The morning shift was already in motion. A girl with braids tucked under a visor looked up from the front register and gave him a quick nod. "You the new guy?" she asked. "Yeah," Zayden said, voice gruffer than usual. "Danny." "They said to come in early today," she gestured to the back. "Clay's in the office, he'll get you logged in." Clay was in his 30s, lean, tall, with a sharp jaw and eyes that moved too fast. He barely looked up from the computer when Zayden stepped in. "You corporate?" Clay asked. "Just training," Zayden said. Clay shrugged. "Whatever, follow the schedule board. You'll be shadowing on register today and clock out at 2 even if no one tells you." "Got it?" Zayden raised an eyebrow. "Even if I'm still working?" "Yeah," Clay snapped. "We're tight on labor. We don't log more than 6 hours unless it's approved. You want hours, earn 'em." Zayden didn't say anything. He made his way to the front, his mind already buzzing. The girl from earlier introduced herself as Gianna. "You get the Clay talk," she whispered. "Something like that," Zayden muttered. She rolled her eyes. "Welcome to 9. Over the next few hours, Zayden learned more from Gianna than he ever would have from a report. She was fast, sharp, and handled customers like a pro. When the fryer jammed, she fixed it. When a parent came in with a crying toddler, she gave the kid a free mini cone. She didn't ask for permission, she just did what was right. But there was tension, too. Another worker, a quiet guy named Lewis, came in late by 7 minutes. Clay walked out of the office with a printed paper in his hand. "Lewis, that's the 3rd time this month. I'm docking your time again." "But I stayed 30 minutes late yesterday," Lewis said, rubbing his forehead. "The line was out the door. No one asked you to stay," Clay cut him off. "You want hours, show up on time." Zayden watched as Lewis walked away silently, face stiff. Gianna leaned in. "He does that to everyone. Changes our clock-ins if we're late, but won't count any over hours unless he approves them. My check's been short 3 times. Zayden's stomach tightened. "That allowed?" Gianna snorted. "No, but what are we gonna do? Complain?" He'd cut our hours even more. Later that day, Zayden caught Clay in the back office again, typing away on the scheduling software. The screen showed employee time logs. Zayden saw at Lewis's clock-out time had been changed from 6:42 p.m. to 6:00 p.m. That was payroll fraud. Clay noticed him at the door. "What are you doing back here?" "Just grabbing sanitizer," Zayden said, pointing toward the supply shelf. Clay narrowed his eyes. "Don't wander." "You're not cleared for the office." Zayden nodded and walked out, heart pounding. He needed to see more. He couldn't jump to conclusions, but something was rotten here. And if Clay was doing this to everyone, people were being robbed. That night, Zayden stayed late under the pretense of helping clean. Lewis was mopping the back. Zayden walked over. "Why don't you report it?" he asked quietly. Lewis gave a tired laugh. "You think corporate cares? This store's been like this for months. I just need the job." Zayden didn't respond. He grabbed a mop and helped. The kid didn't know he was talking to the man who owned all 19 stores. Zayden left the store that night with grease on his shirt and a fire in his chest. He was going to dig deeper. Something told him Clay had been getting away with this for a long time. But not for much longer. Zayden showed up the next day at 6:45 a.m., just 15 minutes before open. The parking lot was empty except for Gianna's red sedan and a delivery truck idling by the back entrance. A light drizzle coated the asphalt. He knocked on the locked front doors until Gianna came around to let him in, wiping her hands on her sleeves. "Clay's late," she muttered. "Again." Zayden stepped inside to find the floor half-mopped, the trash bins still full, and no signs of prep happening. Gianna tied her apron tighter and hurried behind the counter. "He said he'd do the open last night," she added. "Guess that was a lie." Zayden helped her pull the hash browns from the freezer. The usual morning cook, a middle-aged woman named Patrice, walked in 10 minutes later, hair tucked under a scarf and eyes puffy from lack of sleep. "I covered a double at store 3 yesterday," she said, grabbing gloves. "Didn't even get to sit down before my alarm went off." Zayden glanced at her hands. Her knuckles were cracked and red. "You okay working today?" he asked. "No choice," she said. "Clay told me if I called off again, I'd be dropped from full-time." By the time the first customer knocked on the glass, Clay still hadn't arrived. Gianna unlocked the door and flipped the sign. Zayden took the register. The line grew. Patrice juggled the grill and the fryer, sweat beading up before the first hour was over. Zayden's earbud buzzed Clay's voice crackling through the store's intercom from the back office. "Tell the guy in the hoodie to stop hovering at the counter. He's making people uncomfortable." Zayden looked over. A customer tall, mid-30s, wearing a gray hoodie stood quietly by the pickup side. He wasn't saying anything, just waiting for his order. Gianna handed Zayden a bag. "Order 42, she said, nodding toward the man. Zayden called it out. The customer stepped forward, gave a polite nod, and left. Gianna frowned. "What was that about?" Zayden didn't answer. He walked to the back, opened the office door without knocking. Clay spun around in the chair, half a breakfast sandwich in his hand. "Problem? Why'd you say that about the guy up front?" Zayden asked. Clay leaned back. "He was wearing his hood inside, you know how that looks." Zayden's jaw tightened. "No, I don't," Clay shrugged. "It's a vibe thing. We keep it clean in here, no sketchy behavior." "That kind of look puts people on edge." Zayden stepped forward. "You ever say something like that again about a customer based on how they look, and you'll be out of a job. You hear me?" Clay's expression shifted, but he didn't respond. Zayden left the office before the man could say anything else. Back on the floor, the line was wrapped halfway to the door. Lewis had shown up and was taking drive-through orders solo. His headset wasn't working properly. Zayden could hear static each time he spoke. Patrice was moving slower now. Her left arm was stiff and she dropped a spatula while trying to flip patties. Gianna leaned toward Zayden. "We're supposed to have 6 people on mornings. It's been 4 all week." "Why?" he asked. Clay says it's budget control, but the schedule's posted late. "People don't even know their shifts until the night before." Zayden watched Patrice rub her shoulder, jaw clenched as she worked through the pain. "Is she hurt?" "She slipped last week," Gianna said quietly. "Didn't report it. She's afraid to." Zayden stepped behind the line. "Patrice, go sit for 10 minutes, he said. "I'm fine." "You're not. Sit." She hesitated, then nodded and stepped away. Zayden took up the spatula and worked beside Gianna. The rhythm came back to him quickly. Muscle memory from the early years. Clay finally emerged around 10. He wore a pressed polo fresh from the dryer and carried a half-empty coffee. "We're behind," he said, looking around. "No," Zayden said, flipping a burger. "We're short-staffed." Clay ignored the comment. "Danny, go clean the bathrooms and clock out at noon today." "We're tracking high on labor." Gianna's head snapped toward them. Zayden gave a short nod and left the line. The bathrooms were worse than expected. Overflowing trash, wet floors, soap dispensers empty. He grabbed gloves and got to work. While scrubbing the sink, he heard voices outside the door. Clay's cutting my hours again, Lewis said. Why? Gianna asked. He said we're over hours. But I checked he's giving full shifts to 2 new hires who haven't even started training. Zayden stepped out with the mop bucket. Did you tell him that? I tried. He told me to be grateful I'm still on schedule. Zayden looked at them. When's the new hire training? Gianna shook her head. It hasn't started yet. They're just names on the board. I think Clay's logging fake hours to keep budget numbers even. Zayden felt the weight of it settle in his gut. He returned to the office without knocking. Clay was on the phone, laughing. He waved Zayden away, but Zayden stepped in and shut the door. You're logging hours for people who don't work here yet, Clay blinked. Excuse me, you heard me, Clay leaned back. You don't get how this works. We get a labor cap. If we go over, corporate flags us, so I balance it. It's not fraud, it's forecasting. They're not working, that's not forecasting. Clay crossed his arms. You're a temp. You don't know how we operate. Zayden stepped closer. How you operate doesn't matter. You're changing time sheets. You're cutting real hours from real people and replacing them with ghost shifts. Clay stood up. You need to back off. Or what? Clay didn't answer. Zayden locked eyes with him. Good, because you're done here, Clay scoffed. You don't have the authority to say that. Zayden pulled the ID from under his apron, flipped it open, and dropped it on the desk. Zayden Pierce, CEO, founder. Clay stared. His mouth opened, then shut. You've been altering payroll, discriminating against customers, and running this store into the ground, Zayden said. You're terminated, effective immediately, Clay's voice cracked. You can't fire me without HR, I just did. Get your things and leave. Clay stood frozen. I'll escort you out if I have to, Zayden said. Clay walked out, face pale. The staff turned as he passed. No one said a word. Zayden stayed behind the counter the rest of the shift. He called in a regional manager to handle the transition. Patris finally took a real break. Gianna worked silently, but her eyes were brighter. Lewis held the drive-through with a steady rhythm. At the end of the day, Zayden pulled them aside. I'm not here to give a speech, he said. But I saw enough these past 2 days to know this store isn't broken because of you. It's broken because someone made it that way. Gianna shifted her weight. What happens now, new manager, he said. New schedule system, full audit of pay records, retroactive corrections, and an anonymous reporting line that goes directly to my office. He turned to Patris. You're taking the next 2 days off. Paid, and we're getting that arm checked. She nodded, eyes damp. Zayden looked around at them. You deserve better. You're going to get it. They didn't cheer. They didn't clap. But the silence felt different. It felt like relief. The next morning, Zayden arrived early before the lights were on, before the doors were unlocked. He waited in his car, watching the lot fill one slow arrival at a time. The air was still heavy from last night's rain. Patris pulled in with a sling around her left arm. A nurse from a nearby urgent care had confirmed a strain in her rotator cuff. She moved slower, but her eyes were steady. Gianna arrived next, carrying 2 paper bags. She tapped on his window. You eat breakfast yet? She asked, handing him one. No, he said, taking it. Thanks. Figured you'd be here early, she said. Place feels different already, he nodded. There's a lot more to fix. Inside, the store felt quieter, not because there were fewer people, but because the tension had drained out of the walls. Still, the gaps in staffing were obvious. With Clay gone, they were down a lead, and the schedule had to be rewritten overnight. Zayden stepped into the back office. The regional manager, Liana, was already there, sleeves rolled up, typing rapidly at the desktop. She didn't look up. I pulled the last 60 days of time edits, she said. He modified over 200 shifts. Some employees lost upwards of 20 hours per pay period. Zayden leaned over her shoulder. File a case with HR and payroll. I want corrections issued by Friday. Every dollar. They'll push back on retro pay that old. They can push all they want, he said. Do it. Liana nodded once. There's more. He flagged 3 employees for disciplinary review that never existed, no paperwork, no signatures. Just notes in the scheduling tool to justify cutting their hours. Zayden clenched his jaw. Names: Lewis, Gianna, and a former employee, Tyrone Jackson. He quit 2 weeks ago, no exit interview. Find him. I want to know why he left. Liana paused. You going to every store now? No, he said, just this one, until it's right. Back on the floor, the breakfast rush hit hard, orders backed up, the ticket printer jammed. The ice machine stopped dispensing halfway through a refill. Gianna juggled register and packing while Lewis managed drive-through and headset alone, his voice hoarse by mid-morning. Patris kept to prepping only, her arm clearly limiting her movement. Zayden stepped onto the line and took over the grill. Liana joined him, gloves snapping on. You sure you remember how to do this? She asked. Don't need to remember, I never forgot. They worked in silence for 10 minutes, then Gianna called out without looking. Someone's been sitting in the lobby for 30 minutes, no order, just watching. Zayden glanced up. A man in a gray jacket sat by the window. Thin, early 20s, leaning forward with his hands clasped, not familiar. Did he say anything? No, Gianna said, but he keeps checking his phone and looking around. Zayden wiped his hands, pulled off his gloves, and stepped into the dining area. Everything all right? He asked. The man looked up. Yeah, just waiting. For someone, he hesitated. Not exactly, I used to work here. Zayden sat across from him. Tyrone Jackson, the man nodded slowly. I'm Zayden Pierce, he said. Owner. Tyrone blinked. You're kidding. Nope. Not today. Tyrone leaned back. Didn't expect to be talking to you. I heard you left. No paperwork. No one followed up. I want to know why. Tyrone looked away for a moment, then back. I worked here 7 months, did everything they asked, picked up shifts, covered holidays. Then Clay started docking hours, said I was unreliable, never told me what I did, just cut me down to 1 day a week. Did you ask him directly? 3 times. He said if I kept pushing, he'd fire me on the spot. Zayden nodded once. You want to come back? Tyrone raised an eyebrow. You serious? You were never written up, you were never reviewed, and you were forced out without due process, so yes, I'm serious. Tyrone didn't respond right away, then slowly he nodded. Yeah, I'd come back. Start Monday, Zayden said. We'll get your paperwork back in. And this time, there's a chain of accountability. Back in the kitchen, the lunch rush started early. Lines formed fast. Orders stacked up. 2 new hires arrived for onboarding, but without a manager to train them, they hovered awkwardly. Gianna passed Zayden a note while calling out an order. It read, We need someone to run Expo. I can't keep up with bagging and register. Zayden handed it to Liana and nodded toward the counter. She stepped in without a word. By 2, the floor was cleared. The team moved like a unit. Patris prepped and supervised from the back. Gianna ran register and backup. Lewis handled drive-through with one of the new hires shadowing him. Tyrone stayed after to sanitize the lobby, even though he hadn't officially started yet. Zayden gathered them in the break room when the last customer left. You all pushed through today without enough hands, without enough rest, and without a manager, he said. That's not sustainable, so here's what happens next. He pulled a folder from under his arm and laid it on the table. New hire class starts Monday. We're bringing in 5. 4 permanent, 1 floater. Scheduling will be posted 3 days in advance. No more last-minute changes. Gianna leaned forward. And the hours, full shifts, no undercuts. If you work it, you get paid for it. Retro pay is processing. Some of you will see corrections as early as Friday. Patris looked down at her sling. And if we're injured, you report it, you rest. You recover. No threats, no penalties. We're contacting a third-party safety trainer to evaluate our setup. You'll be part of those sessions. Lewis raised his hand. What about the headset? Mine's been cutting out all day. Zayden nodded. We're replacing the full comm system by next week. No more patchwork. Tyrone stood. And if someone like Clay gets hired again, won't happen, Zayden said. Hiring for leadership roles now requires approval from my office. All managers will go through ethics and conduct training quarterly. That starts this month. The room was quiet, not tense, just still. Then Patris spoke. Why now? Zayden looked at her. Because I stopped listening to the wrong people. And you deserved better long before today. No one clapped, no one cheered, but someone exhaled sharply like they'd been holding it for too long. Gianna picked up her bag. All right then. I'll see you all tomorrow. One by one, they filed out quiet nods, tired shoulders but lighter steps. Zayden stayed behind to close. He walked the lobby, wiped tables, and locked the doors himself. Outside, the lot was dark. Rain started again, light but steady. He stood under the awning, watching the streetlights glow through the wet. He didn't feel satisfied. That wasn't the point, but he felt present. And that was a start. By the end of the week, Zayden had turned one of the storage closets into a makeshift office. He didn't tell anyone how long he planned to stay, but the folding chair and stack of daily logs on the desk told the team he wasn't leaving anytime soon. Friday opened with the same short crew. Tyrone had officially rejoined and was back on prep with Patris. Lewis was reassigned to front register to give his voice a break after nearly a week on drive-through. Gianna, with a clipboard in hand, had taken on training duties for the two new hires who'd shown up on time and were eager but clearly green. The fifth had never confirmed orientation. Zayden was on headset, taking orders. It was quieter than the last few days, but not slow. The rhythm was improving, still fragile but no longer chaotic. Mid-morning, a black SUV pulled up and parked in the fire lane. Zayden glanced toward the window but didn't break stride. The front doors opened seconds later and a tall man in a pressed shirt and dress shoes stepped inside. He walked straight to the counter, ignoring the line. "Is the manager available?" he asked, scanning the room. Gianna approached. "We're in the middle of a rush." "Can I help you?" "I'm from corporate," he said. "Name's Brian Leavitt, District Finance Oversight." Zayden stepped out from behind the headset. "You're early." Brian looked him over, confused. "And you are?" "I own the place," Zayden said. "Let's talk in the back." They moved into the converted closet office. Zayden shut the door behind them. "You weren't scheduled to visit until next week," Zayden said. Brian took a seat uninvited. "I heard you've been making unauthorized payroll corrections." "You heard right. I'm fixing stolen wages." "Look, Zayden." Brian leaned forward, voice low. "If we start reissuing retroactive pay across multiple locations, we're opening the door to liability. We can't just admit fault." "I'm not asking," Zayden said. "I'm instructing, and it's one store. I've reviewed the others. 9's the only one with manipulated records." Brian's jaw twitched. "There's a protocol. You're pushing through changes without HR sign-off." "No," Zayden said. "I'm implementing accountability. If the protocol allows time theft, the protocol's broken." Brian stood up. "You're setting a dangerous precedent." "No," Zayden said again. "Clay set the precedent. I'm correcting it." Brian opened his mouth, then closed it. Without another word, he left. Zayden stayed in the office a moment longer, letting the tension settle. Then he headed back out. By noon, the Friday lunch crowd hit. A group of high schoolers poured in, followed by a pair of nurses on break. The line stretched out the door for nearly 8 minutes. Gianna moved between training and register, guiding the new hire through the POS system while keeping the flow going. Zayden caught up with her at the soda fountain. "How's she doing?" he asked. Gianna wiped her hands on her apron. "Better than expected. She froze up when a customer asked for a substitution, but she asked for help instead of guessing." "Good instincts," he said. Gianna hesitated. "You planning to stay long-term?" "I'll stay until this place can run without someone being afraid to speak." She nodded slowly. "We've been scared for a while." "I know," he said. "Not anymore." Across the lobby, a man in a navy jacket with white lettering on the back started getting loud. He was waving a receipt and pointing at Patris. "I ordered no cheese. This has cheese. Are you deaf or just slow?" Patris stood behind the counter, her good arm at her side, not moving. Zayden walked over calmly. "Sir, I can remake your order." "I don't want it remade. I want her to look me in the eye and admit she messed up." "She's not required to take abuse," Zayden said. "If you want a refund, I'll process it. If not, you're free to leave." The man's face reddened. "I'm a paying customer." "And she's a human being," Zayden said. "You're done here." The man looked around as if expecting support. None came. He left without another word. Patris didn't say anything. She just nodded once and returned to the grill. An hour later, a surprise health inspection team arrived. Zayden didn't flinch. Every station was clean. Expiration labels were up to date. Gloves were in use. The inspector lingered near the backline, checking temperatures and storage. She made a note on her clipboard and left without comment. By the end of the shift, the team was exhausted. Not from chaos, just from working at full tilt with no margin. Zayden gathered them in the lobby after close. "We're not there yet," he said, "but we're on track. Next week, 2 more new hires start. One of them's already certified on drive-through. That'll let Lewis rotate out." Lewis nodded, not saying much, but his posture relaxed. "Tyrone," Zayden said, "you're being moved into a shift lead trial. Not a title yet, just a test run. You've earned the chance." Tyrone looked up, surprised. "You sure?" "I'm sure," Zayden said. Gianna stepped forward. "And what about a permanent manager?" Zayden paused. "We're not hiring one yet." She raised an eyebrow. "So you're doing it?" "No," he said. "You are if you want it." She blinked. "Me, you've been running the floor for 3 days without being asked. You've trained, solved problems, and kept things moving. If you want the role, it's yours on interim. We'll revisit in 30 days. Real title, real pay." She didn't answer right away. Then, "All right, I'll do it." Zayden turned to Patris. "You're being moved to morning prep only, no double shifts. You train the new people on safe handling. You'll also advise on equipment upgrades." She nodded once, then added, "We need a better mop sink, ours overflows." "Ordered already," he said. They stood there a moment longer, tired, quiet. But something in the room had shifted again, this time not from tension, but from weight lifting. Later that night, Zayden sat alone in the dining area, going over a notebook of observations. The store was empty, floors still damp from closing. The windows reflected the soft glow of the overhead lights. Liana entered, holding a thick envelope. "Final payroll corrections," she said. "All logged, all approved." He took it. "Thank you." She studied him for a moment. "You going to do this at the other stores, if I have to?" he said. She nodded. "You shouldn't have to." "No," he agreed. "But I will." She left. Zayden remained seated. The store wasn't perfect. It wasn't fixed. But it was honest now. That mattered more than numbers on a report. He stood, checked the locks, and turned off the lights. The store didn't need a savior. It needed a leader who showed up. Now it had one.